everybody. Welcome back to the Covenant Eyes podcast. We're so glad to have you join us. We are still at NRB and meeting a lot of amazing folks here. Rob, today is no exception. We have got a great guest joining us.
Oh, we do. We've had some great ones, but we're excited to have Melissa Dougherty. Dougherty?
Dougherty, yeah.
Yeah,
you got it.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the Covenant Eyes podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Well, for our listeners, would you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you have gotten to the ministry that you're in today?
Sure. Yeah. I became a Christian at 16, fell into some wiggity whack theology, which is what I wrote about. And then got into counter cult ministry after that, which is, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons. Maybe that's a strong word, counter cult, but that's kind of what we called it at the time. And that was in 2011, and then got into online ministry about 5 years ago or so, maybe. Kind of accidentally, and it turned into a thing. So here we are.
Oh my gosh.
Good.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love your full story. And, you have a YouTube channel and you share a lot of that. So it's really exciting. But you have a journey and you've seen some of the dark side of this deconstruction movement. Mm-hmm. You talk a lot about that. Let's talk about your book, though, Happy Lies, because I think you probably dive into some of those topics and some of that stuff. So let's talk about what's in this book and when does it come out, or is it out now?
It's already out.
Perfect.
Yeah,
okay.
I think today, what is the date?
Today.
I think it's a month today or tomorrow or something like that. Yeah, it just came out. But yeah, it's called Happy Lies. And it's about the New Thought movements. The subtitle is How a Movement You Probably Never Heard of Shaped Our Self-Obsessed World, because everybody's heard of this. People are like, what's New Thought? No, you've experienced it, even if you don't know what the movement is. And it's not to be confused with New Age. I think that's where people go, is like, oh, it's the same as New Age. And you know what New Age is? Think of tarot cards, psychic mediums, Reiki, reincarnation, karma. I could go down a whole list. It's more Eastern.
Okay.
New Thought is more subtle. It's more Gnostic in origin, and it's made to look Christian. So it's
extra
very
dangerous.
Yes, that's how I got caught up in it. I'm like, oh, this is real Christianity. This is, true Christianity. It's a metaphysical Christianity is what they would say, which is there's a non-literal understanding to certain things in the Bible that has a higher meaning, an esoteric meaning. This is where it can get kind of Gnostic. Think of manifestation, affirmations.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And my friend Elisa Childers, you know who that is?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, me and her had an inside joke forever when I thought I was a New Ager, basically. I was maybe 80-20. There was always an overlap, but we had an inside joke where, a progressive Christian and a New Ager, New Thoughter really, walk into a coffee shop and discover they believe the same thing and become best friends. We're like, what is this overlap? How does this happen? So I have a whole chapter on that about why so many progressives sound like a New Thoughter. Where does this come from? The self-help movement, the foundation of the self-help movement came from New Thought authors like Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, Norman Vincent Peale. All of them called themselves Christians, but they're teaching these New Thought concepts.
Interesting.
Yeah, in every chapter, it's secular and it's also religious. I go into the history. I go into some controversial places that it's in the church. There's something for everybody in this book to get mad about.
Sounds like you leave nothing on the table here.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you brought up some names like Dale Carnegie. I mean, any of us that have gone to business
school. Oh, he's got some great stuff.
He's got some great material. And it's kind of, that's the indoctrination you go through in business school. And it's like, wow.
You sign up for one thing, but you don't realize that you're signing it. Yeah, it's like a cookbook.
Oh. Yeah.
Like you're following this really good diet, but you don't understand that there's an underlying philosophy that goes along with it. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. So what has the reception been so far to the book? Because I'm sure there are a lot of people that are a little offended because they don't realize they're probably walking in this New Thought kind of movement.
I haven't really I'm still feeling that part out, if I'm honest. I feel like I think in a year, I'll know how to answer that.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Because I'm like, it's an expose of this movement that looks and sounds Christian that you might be believing. And that's hard. And I explained that's what happened to me, though. I know how this feels. Except it wasn't just like I was dabbling in it, like law of attraction and visualization, all these things. And I was in it thinking it was Christian. And so I know what that feels. But my attitude was, oh, I need to lean in. I need to repent. Oh, no, I need to lean into this. And so my hope is so far it's that. But every message I've gotten has been thank you. So that's interesting. I'm positive that there's people out there that they're not going to like it. But I did I make a joke that I lost my mind writing this book because I tried so hard to have integrity writing it, to make sure that the research was sound. I did boots on the ground research. So I went and I actually went into the Unity Centers. I went into the places that believe it, progressive churches. I had the conversations, and they are wonderful people.
Sure.
And I think there's a humanizing element, that I want to bring to the table, where I'm like, to understand somebody doesn't mean you affirm them, but I need to understand completely what this belief system is for you to know what it is. And I did my best doing that. And I hope that, the research comes full circle and people can see what this is, but also why it's not biblical.
Yeah. Now, Melissa, do you, in your book, do you just really explain this movement, or do you really counter it with the gospel?
Most of it is explaining it.
Okay.
Yeah. Most of it is, I have 2 chapters, 3, just educating the reader on what this is. And the first half is kind of more secular. Like, where is it in a secular sense? And then relativism. I had to go over, you can't believe this without messing with truth, which is why kind of like Happy Lies. Yeah. It's a way of kind of bending reality and truth to your will, but that sounds simplistic. In their mind, it's not that simple. And so it's really just, here's what this is, here's why it matters, and every chapter expands on what this is and how it's affected Christians and Christianity.
It sounds like a really deep read. Like, you're going to want to spend some time here. Really
it's brain
going
hurt.
Into it. Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
And I think it probably will reveal areas of our lives where maybe these things have creeped in, and we really need to assess where we're at. What are some of the most common things that you're seeing, in the church today, where this kind of thought, this stuff is sneaking in, and we're just kind of unaware?
I think, I'll start with one, and then I'll give a more controversial one. First one is manifestation. This is an enormous trend. If there's any parents listening right now, your kids are hearing about manifestation and law of attraction and visualization, the powers of the mind, powers of the universe, things like that.
Can you explain what that means just a little bit?
They all kind of go together. I mentioned law of attraction, manifestation. Think of your thoughts and your feelings very specifically being magnetic and have like a magnetic frequency that affects everything around you. Okay. So it builds on this concept. This can sound a little geeky, called idealism, which is this idea that the material world, physically, everything you see physically, is a response to your mind, which is why you can think yourself rich, think yourself healthy, think yourself, So you're manifesting. So, and there's actually a proper way to use the word where that's not what it means, but that's typically, the way it goes. Same with metaphysical.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, you got to kind of define them a little bit more. But manifestation is a big trend. The other one, this one kind of gets people, is that the health and wealth prosperity teachings are not inherently solely in that camp. That I draw a line back, the historic line, back to New Thought, because my frustration was I left this movement and I'm seeing the exact phrasing, the exact scriptures, everything in the church. I'm like, what's the connection here? And it turns out that's no coincidence. There's a direct line back to the New Thought movement. And so that's just 3. There's a lot more. You have positive confessions with like your mind or your words and thoughts having power. So what you think and speak creates your reality because you're a co-creator with God. Everything I just said is a New Thought concept.
Oh my goodness.
But I guarantee that there are Christians being taught that in a Christian context. So, and that's just a few. Like there's chapters that go over where this is more in the church and in society. Yeah.
At the end of the day, what does this do to the church? I mean, obviously with this creeping in and the pressures that we see in culture, culture just kind of denigrating around us, what is this going to do to the church if we don't get ourselves educated, read a book like this, know the dangers, and take action?
Well, I first want to give some grace, because I think that if you believe this as a Christian, it doesn't mean you're not saved. You can be in error and still be saved. I believe wholeheartedly that you do not need to have 100% good theology. I did not. I I believed the gospel, radically changed, and I believed in some really crazy things for a few years.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And then I came out of it. So I do want to give grace there. It doesn't mean you're like a heretic or anything bad like that. But I think what happens is that you become a spiritual cancer and you don't know it. You are, in essence, misrepresenting what truth is, and you don't know it. And I think when we know better, we do better. And I really do think that there's so much more I could say on that, but I would say that in essence, that's what happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Well, Melissa, we are really excited to share with our listeners this book, and we want to encourage everybody to get their hands on this book. In closing today, do you have some words of encouragement to our audience? Because I'm sure this is going to open a lot of eyes, a lot of new revelation will come from this. But at the end of the day, we still need hope and encouragement for our future.
Well, I would say that, there's so much to look. First, know what this is. I think that, knowing what this is, knowing your Bible, and maybe sidelining a few things like, does this look secret? Does this look new? Who is it glorifying? These are the questions that we got to ask ourselves. And just something a theme in the book is not being afraid of the light. Right? Like we always say, don't be afraid of the dark. I'm like, don't be afraid of the light.
Yeah.
Because Jesus is the light. And it's in John 3:17 through 21. And I quote that. And I think that's really what it's about. I would encourage you don't be afraid to go in the light and be exposed for what this is. Because he says those that won't come to him, they're in the darkness. And there is a false light, a light that is dark.
Absolutely. So, yeah. Melissa, where do our listeners find your book and more information about you and connect with you?
Yeah, anywhere you can buy books there. And then I'm on YouTube. That's where most people know me from. I'm on all socials.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's where they can find me.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Well, and if you haven't checked out Melissa's YouTube channel, it's amazing. You have a ton of good teaching, a lot of great videos. I think you've had Alan Parr on your channel.
Oh yeah.
You
Alan,
guys are
Frank, everybody.
Friends of Covenant Eyes, so you know them well, audience. So that's fantastic. Well, Melissa, thank you for putting the thought and the effort into this book, because I know it wasn't easy doing all the research and having to go in and really research it well. So thank you for this, and our listeners will be blessed.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to this episode of the Covenant Eyes podcast. We'll see you next time.